In this video, I'm going to go through project 5-12 on page 279. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through this entire project, doing it just the way that I would do it if I was assigned to actually complete the project. I'm going to develop all the parts, the assembly, the presentation, the drawing, and put everything together. So, I'm going to get started by first just going to New, and I'm going to pick a standard millimeter IPT, and this is the same way that you're pretty much going to start off no matter what it is that you're working on. Now, as this comes up, I want to begin to think now about how I'm going to actually be saving things into folders and stuff like that. And I know that I'm going to have, at a minimum, I'm going to have 6 different parts that are part of this. So I'm going to have 6 part files, an assembly file, a presentation file, a drawing file, and a PDF file. So I'm going to have a lot of files associated with this. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and get started, and I'm going to start with the center link, which is probably the most difficult part to do on this particular exercise. So now, to start this, I'm just going to go ahead and place one of my circles, and I'm going to place it right here, giving it a diameter of 30. So now with that one having a diameter of 30, I'm going to go ahead and create the other one that's going to be over in this area, again with a diameter of 30. Now I want a line that goes between here, that goes straight to here, but also lines up with this particular point, so I'll go ahead and draw those 2 lines in. Now, I know that the distance between the centers is 80 in each direction, so I can come in here and make this 80, and I will make this 80 as well. So now I've got both of my circles located. The only problem with having both of them located is they are located using lines that I'm not actually going to be needing to do the extrusion. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to highlight both of those lines and come up here and click Construction. Now these lines are construction lines. I can do whatever else I want with these lines, but in the overall grand scheme of things, they're not going to affect the way that I pretty much do anything else in this particular part. So now I want to begin to build the rest of this part. I know that I need a line that comes from here, and it's going to come down, and it will form a corner and go over to this line. And then I need another one that's going to come off of here, that's going to come up like this. Now, the thing that I want to do now is I want to put a dimension between here and here of 6, dimension between here and here of 12, dimension between here and here, and I'm going to left click to place it, but rather than type 6 again, I'm going to left click on that 6 and hit the check box, and then I'll grab these 2, come up here and hit the 12, and grab the check box. So now I've got everything in place, all of my dimensions, and I can continue working this particular problem out. The next thing I want to do is I want to draw a line that goes between this and this. And again, I want to make that a construction line because I don't actually need it for what I'm doing. But I do need it for the parallel constraints that are going to exist between this line and this line. Now, the same way as I did before, we're going to dimension between here and here at 6, dimension between here and here at 12. Now you're going to see up here that that's going to cause these 2 lines right here to actually intersect. That's good because I'm going to be filleting those lines here in a minute anyway, and I want to make sure that they are in the correct location. So when I look at this, I see that all fillets and rounds are 3. Now I can go ahead and put the fillets and rounds in now, or I can clean this up so that I can put in the fillets and rounds later. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and clean this up by removing this piece and this piece. And then we'll remove this portion of this circle, this portion of this circle, getting rid of these 2 little lines. And now I need to re-extend so that I could, well no, actually I'm still getting rid of parts of this line. Okay, so what I now basically have is I basically have the rough overall shape for this particular object. I do want to draw a circle from here with a diameter of 30, and then I need to trim out all the parts of this and then these two segments in here. So I now have pretty much everything that I need for this particular piece in place. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and extrude this piece. It's given thickness, and when I look at this, I can see that the plate web, which is the part that I'm working on right now, is 10 millimeters thick. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to extrude this profile 10 millimeters and say OK. So here I have the rough overall shape of the object that I'm working with. I now want to begin to place some of the holes that I have. So I'll go to the hole command, and I'm going to do this one here first. It is 10 from the bottom and 10 from the side. Going to have to do a little bit of math to get to the 10s, but once you do that, you'll be fine. So once I place these two dimensions in here, I can say that this does go through all, and this hole has a diameter of 5. So I'll go ahead and place this 5, and I'll apply that hole. Now I know that for the rest of these holes, I got to go with some different points for where they're actually dimensioned from. So it's going to require a little bit of math to get to everything that I need. Now, for most of the situations that we have here, we're going between center points, center to center. But on the bottom dimensions, it gives us a little bit of an indication as to what the dimensions actually are. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to place this dimension, or this hole right here. Use this as a reference edge and this as a reference edge. Well, this one's going to be 6 because it is centered. And this one here is going to be 30 because it is the 10 for the original one plus the 20. So we'll type in a 30 for that one. And then I can go ahead and apply that one. Rather than placing the next hole over here, I'm going to go ahead and place the hole up here. And based on the math that I did in the previous one, I know that it is 30 to this first hole because this object is symmetrical along the 45-degree axis. So I can then apply everything that I have. Well, now what I want to do is a rectangular pattern, and I'm going to pick this feature. My direction is going to be this direction right here. I want to flip it the other way. I want 2 of them, and I want them to be 26 apart. So I will go ahead and say OK to that. Right back to rectangular pattern, pick this feature, pick this as my direction, and again it's 26 millimeters between the two, so I can say OK. Now I've got to work out where these things are going to be with relation to this particular object. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and go back to the hole command. I have 2 holes with diameter 10 that are concentric holes, so I'm going to change this to concentric. This is the plane, this is the concentric reference. It goes through all with a diameter of 10. I'll apply that. This is the surface, this is the concentric reference, diameter of 10, and I'll apply that. Now to get these last 2 holes, since I really don't have anything to measure against, I'm going to go ahead and start a new sketch on this face. And in the process of doing this, I'm going to draw a line between here and here, just like the line that I had in the very first segment that I created. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here and I'm going to place points. I'm going to place 1 point here and 1 point here. Now I can dimension between this point and this point at 40, and then another dimension between this point and this point at 40. I can then finish this sketch and go right back to the hole command, And now what you'll notice, it automatically picks up on those 2 points that I created, and I'll give them a diameter of 5 and say OK. So now I've got almost this entire piece done. The only thing I need to do is go back and add some fillets and rounds with an R of 3. So I'll go to fillet, change my radius to 3, and then I'll begin picking edges. I know that this edge, this edge, this edge, these 2 edges in here, this edge here, this edge back here, this one up here, and this one in here are all the edges that need filleted, which is pretty much all the edges that make up the sharp corners for this particular part. So I'll go ahead and apply that, and now I'm done with the first piece. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here and I'm going to go to Save. This is where I need to start making sure that I'm doing things the way that I want. First thing I want to do is create a new folder. And in this new folder, I'm going to call it 5-12. And then within this folder, I'm going to call this Plate. And I'll go ahead and save that file. So now I've got the first file done. Now I can move on to the second piece of this. So again, new, standard millimeter IPT. And in this case here, I'm going to go ahead and draw the drive link, which is the little link. And to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with a line, and I'm just going to bring the line straight out 30, and then I'm going to left click and drag off of that endpoint to create an arc. Draw this line, finish off the arc, put a dimension on here of 10, and now I can go ahead and finish this sketch, extrude it, thickness of 10, go to the hole command, concentric referenced holes, and these holes are 10. So there we've got the first hole. I'll apply that, place the second hole, apply that. This piece is done. I'm going to save it, and it's going to be called Drive Link. Now notice it puts it in the exact same folder that I just created the other part in. If you do that and you save that other part first and you put it in a folder, then everything you do after that's going to be much easier. So I now have this saved. The next piece that I'm going to work on is going to be the center link. But rather than redo anything, I'm just going to go to File, Save As, and I'm going to call this now Center Link. So now what I have is I've got the center link. I can go back to the original sketch, change this 30 to 90, finish my sketch, and you'll notice that it gets a lot bigger. Now I can just do a new sketch on this surface, starting with a line, forming it into an arc, another line, let me undo that little segment right there. And we'll close this off on this side with an arc. Now the distance between this and this is 20. This distance is 50. The radius here is 5. And I want a horizontal constraint between here and here. So what this gives me is this gives me the actual part that I need to extrude. So now I can go ahead and extrude, and I'm going to say all cutting, and now I have my center link. So I'm going to go ahead and save it, and then I'm going to go right back to Save As, and now I'm going to call it Rocker Link. We'll click Save, and now I'm working in the Rocker Link file. Go back to the first extrusion, edit the sketch, make this 100, finish that sketch, come back into sketch 2, change this to 15, change this to 70, finish that sketch, and now I've got my rocker link. I'll go back up to new again, standard millimeter IPT. I'm going to draw a circle with a diameter of 10, extrude it 10, we'll say OK to that. Now I did make a mistake that I'm going to have to go back and fix on a couple of files, but I'll get to that in a second. So we're going to save this as peg_10. I'm going to right click on the extrusion and say Edit Feature. Change my extrusion height to 15. Go to File, Save As, and now it's peg 15. Okay, so by doing that, I've effectively gotten all of the parts and pieces that I need. I do want to go back into my file here and open up some of the files that I had currently worked on because I got a couple of the dimensions wrong. So first I'm going to go to my drive link, and I'm going to right click on the first extrusion and say Edit Feature and change this to 5. Save that. I'll go right back in here, open my center link, right click the extrusion, Edit Feature, change that to 5, save that, and go back to my rocker link, right click, Edit Feature, change that to 5. See, and if I was paying attention to the drawing as I went along, I wouldn't be having any of these problems right now. Well, now, since I've got all of the parts and pieces that I need, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to New, and this time I'm going to grab an assembly file. So I'm going to go to Standard Millimeter IAM. And in this particular case, I want the main plate, which is the very first part that I did, to be the grounded piece. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up Windows Explorer, and I'm going to go to the folder where I've created everything, and I'm going to highlight all of the files, and I'm going to left click and drag from plate right into my file, and what that's going to do is it's going to bring in all the parts and pieces. So now I'm going to go to the constraint tool, and I'm going to use an insert constraint for just about every single part and piece on here. Now from here I want the bottom part of this. I'll apply that. Attached to that is the center link, which is the smaller of the two. I'll apply that. And attached to that is the rocker link, which is the longer of the two. And then on the bottom of the rocker link it connects to right here, and I'll apply that. Now it doesn't look real good until I actually move it out and get it into an orientation that actually makes sense. Now I've got these pegs right here. I need 2 of the peg 15s and I need 2 of the peg 10s. So what I did was I just highlighted peg 15, and I'm going to come over here and left click and drag right back in from the browser to get a second one. And then I'm going to left click on peg 10 and left click and drag it in so that I've got 2. Go right back to my constraint tool, grab the insert, we'll grab right here and right here. I need to flip that one. I'll apply that, apply that, apply that, and apply that. So there you can now see that I've got my entire assembly complete in this particular file. Now, I'm not concerned with what your orientation is or the rotation, just as long as the object isn't running through itself, everything will pretty much be fine. But I'm going to go ahead and save this. It's 5-12, and notice that this is going in the same folder that all the other files are going into. So I can go ahead and save that, go right back up here to New, and now I want a standard millimeter IPN. So here's my standard millimeter IPN. I open it up, and the first thing that I need to do is create a base view. Excuse me. So I go to Create View. It's already got the file loaded that I want, so I just say OK. And now I can zoom out on this, and I'm ready to begin my exploded portion of this. To do this, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go to Tweak Components, and there's a lot of information in this dialog box that I'm just going to pretend doesn't exist for right now. The way I'm going to explain the presentations to you is Inventor wants to move everything that it can along the Z axis. So if I come over here and I hover over the top of this peg, I can see that the Z goes straight up. At this point, if I left click and drag, it's going to pull out that Z. So I come over here, hit clear. Come over here, pull up this one along the Z, clear. Come over here, pull this one up along the Z, hit clear. Come back over here, pull this one up along the Z. And for some reason this one didn't come up, so I'll just move it up now. Now if I hover over the face of this and pull it up, it comes up along the Z. I can clear that, pull this one up, comes up again along the Z. I can clear that. Now when I close this and save it, I've got 5-12 IPN. The benefit to doing this is I can then go to Animate and hit play. And what it'll do is it'll put this thing back together in the exact opposite order that I took it apart. That way, if you wanted to create a video or something like that for somebody to be able to see exactly how the part goes together, you can use this type of tool to do that. Now, once this is done, I'm going to hit reset, and it goes back out to my exploded view. This little target symbol right here will actually allow you to record everything that you do into a WMV format, which you could share in PowerPoint or whatever else you wanted to share it in. So I'm going to go ahead and cancel that and save it. So now I've got all of my part files done, I've got my assembly done, I've got my presentation done. The only other thing that I got to do is develop the drawing and create the PDF. So I'm now going to go to New again. And this time I'm going to pick standard millimeter IDW. I'm sorry, ANSI millimeter IDW. Now your requirement for this particular, or for these two assignments that you have this week, is an exploded view with part numbers and a list of material. So first thing I want to do is create my base view. And I want to create it from that IPN file that I made. Now this is not the best view to show that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on Change View Orientation, and it's going to allow me to orbit this thing into a view where everything is a little bit more visible. And this view right here, if I keep it right like this seems to be a pretty good view to use. So I'm going to go to Finish Custom View. Now I've got a pretty big sheet here, so I can go ahead and scale this thing 2:1. Because I'm not really concerned about taking up the whole page. This is going to be the sheet that the person is going to look to determine how to put this thing together. And I am going to go ahead and go with a shaded view just for clarity and so that they don't have to try to figure out which lines are going to which parts. So I'll left click to drop this view right here, and you'll notice it's going to come in, it's going to have all of the trail lines and everything else to show me everything that is going on. Now it wants me to create other views, but I'm done. I just want this one view right here. Now the next thing I need to do is go to Annotate. And on the Annotate, what I want to do is do a parts list. So I'm going to click on Parts List, select the view, and say OK. And it's going to say Bomb View is disabled. Do you want to enable it? I'll say OK, because yes I do. And then left click right here, and it'll drop out my parts list. It gives everything a number, automatically does all the counting, and everything else like that. So now I can go to balloon, left click this part, left click to place the balloon, then right click and continue. You have to make sure that you hit continue or it won't actually place your balloons. So I'm going to go through here and I'm going to label every single part in this particular view. And I believe this is the only other part that I have. Okay, so I can see that all the pegs are labeled, this plate's labeled, this plate's labeled, everything in here is pretty much labeled. If for any reason, if you look, this right here has a number 3. If for some reason you accidentally move that leader to a different part, it'll automatically update it to a different number. So it's really difficult to have parts labeled incorrectly in this particular program. There's a lot of other things that you can do within the program. For the purposes of this week, this is what I'm looking for, so I'll continue from here. So I'm going to go ahead and save this. Again, it's being saved in the same folder as everything else. And then, after I have all of this done, I can come right down here to Export PDF. Save it as P5-12.pdf, and again, everything is in the same folder, all real easy to find. And right now it's creating the PDF file for me, so once the PDF file is done, I'm pretty much ready to submit that file. The only thing I need to do is go to Explorer, go to the folder where this is stored, and right there is the PDF. So that's the process that you're pretty much going to be using for this exercise and the other exercise. It's just a matter of making sure that you keep all of your files in the same location and keep everything organized.